Fantastic. Hey, for anyone who's joining us, obviously this is a conversation with Lieutenant Curtis Eller and some leadership from Fairfield Yabantu. We're going to be talking a little bit about the PEP program, Stratford Police PEP program, and this is kind of a pre-workshop discussion. All right, what we'll be talking about. Here we go. Sandra?
I think one of the most important questions is what should we expect to learn, kind of in a nutshell, for both the community that's attending and the police department, Fairfield Police Department, that is coming?
Well, what we hope to kind of discuss is perspectives, looking through the lens of both. And so what we always try to do is give a community perspective and a minority perspective that law enforcement, I mean, let's be honest, law enforcement, there's a majority of white officers in law enforcement. And so what we try to do is give a minority perspective to those officers when we do our trainings at post. So now when we do our community trainings, we try to also let them understand, or let you understand, that we know, or we can empathize, or we can feel the community perspective. And what we also try to do is convey a police perspective. And what we've kind of realized is that it's been difficult for both sides to sit together and have a conversation about that, about our different perspectives, and ask questions of each other, honest, true questions that we don't know the answer to. But it's been difficult because of all that's going on today in today's society. And there's a lot of factors that play into that. We get into, some of those things, but really the nut of it is really the goal of it is really to try to develop a mutual empathy for both sides. And so that's what we hope to achieve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Curtis, I was curious to know, how do you differentiate, what you present, what issues you choose to cover for the departments that you work with? That I imagine, and I don't know if this is true, but the needs of the community in an affluent town may be different to that of the needs in a poverty-stricken town. The problems perhaps of policing are different in an affluent town that they are in poverty-stricken towns. So how do you navigate those waters?
So it's difficult, to be honest with you, because every town or every city is different, and every community is different, and their concerns and their priorities are different. And so we have to be, flexible. And so within our structured curriculum, in our outlined program, we have to be prepared to go off on different tangents, and we do. So everyone is different, and so it's great in a sense, but in another sense, it drains you emotionally, because it's so, and you get so involved in each one. And so we love that aspect of it, but at the end of it, and so it does. It takes its toll on you, but it's a good tired for lack of a better way to say it, because it's meaningful and it's valuable, and we always feel like there's growth at the end of it. And sometimes it's been contentious at times, and there's been, I'll leave it at, sometimes it's been not easy. It's been uncomfortable, but we feel like you have to be able to get to that and go through that to get to the growth. So it's been good, and we're prepared for it. But that's just the way it is. And every town, every place is different. But and we don't have all the answers. So, we really just kind of talk about what's been successful for us.
Mm-hmm.
Try to pass it on.
Can I follow up to that question? Do you think that race plays a part in that as well? I mean, Trey just mentioned, economics, that's a factor, but do you think that race, would you agree? Because I do. Would you agree that race may play a part in that as well?
Race, absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And culture, absolutely, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Religion, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
socioeconomic areas that you live in, the wealth gap, the education gap, all these things play a factor in it.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times it's policing is sometimes wrapped into that. The comment or question of the school to prison pipeline, sometimes that
Right.
comes up. And we talk about that. So we talk about our understanding of that and our perceptions of that and how we are doing things to try to change that within our department. And so but we also have to say and I do say we understand how other communities can feel the way they may feel because maybe that's what's going on or what they're encountering in their board of educations or their school districts. And so but we understand that and we do things a little differently, and so we speak to that. And so
I gotta ask, Amanda, I know you're next on this, but I gotta ask, and I think you kind of alluded to this a bit. What is the point of contention sometimes? Where are folks having a hard time when you earlier on said that it could be contentious sometimes? What
Yeah.
is the point of contention in some of these workshops?
so just along the lines of there's one, police brutality and disparate treatment and how it's again, it has to do with through the lens that you're looking and how you've been brought up. And sometimes it's hard to understand something if you haven't experienced it.
Yeah.
And we know that. And so we talk about that. We talk about the research that we've done and the research that not only in the books, but with our family, with our we talk about we're gonna Saturdays. It's gonna be good. It's gonna because it gets deep and it gets emotional. But we talk about speaking to our parents who are in their mid 70s and our grandparents who are beyond that and what it was like for them coming up and how what they felt and the fact that they didn't necessarily talk to us when we were young about those experiences because they didn't want to taint us or hurt us and have that affect us going forward. But now as an adult, when we talk to them about it, it's powerful and it's extremely hurtful to hear what they went through. But now to explain that to officers of this understanding that we're now getting that fortunately wasn't passed down to us, but trying to get them to understand that it was or may have been passed down to some. And so we talk about the history of policing and we talk about how Black and brown communities may feel some animosity towards police just based on their family history that has been passed down. And so if you haven't experienced it, you can't understand that. You're like, well, why would people feel this way about us? Why is there this barrier to this badge? I don't understand that. And so that we try to explain that to some officers. And so we talked to them when we had multiple conversations about the experience our parents had during that time of segregation in the 60s and the civil rights movement. We also talk about, slavery and the Reconstruction period, and 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, and what the goals of that were, and what the failures of that was as well, and how that affected generations after. And so Jim Crow, Black codes, some of those things, like we talk about those things because we know not everybody knows about it. It wasn't necessarily taught in our educational system. You know, we were taught about slavery and we were taught about certain things moving forward in the civil rights movement, but we weren't taught about, and we talk about peonage and we get into that. And so it's mind blowing to some, and you could see it on their face after we discuss it, but not everybody's aware of that. And you know, it's a disservice to all of us that we don't discuss that. Because you need to know about it. That's where empathy is developed. Feel so it's a lot. We talk about all that, you know, and we get into it. But again, you know, we do talk about both sides. And so, but that's just a little.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and really looking forward to Saturday. It's clear that a lot of truth gets spoken at these workshops, and I appreciate your work. And then hopefully that truth moves towards reconciliation if that's necessary. And I think for us, we hope that maybe it leads also to a different level of accountability. Can you give us an example, or can you talk a little bit about sort of what happens in precincts after they've gone through workshops like this? Is it just sort of a change of perspective, and that's not a little thing? Or are there policy changes? Like, what kinds of things can happen because a precinct embraces this workshop and a community embraces this workshop?
So I think like any true systemic change, it doesn't happen immediately. And it's like I feel like we plant the seed, but we still have to kind of water it and nurture it. And that's what we put ourselves out there to do. So every time we go and we have this conversation, we leave our cards for the community and for the police to say, listen, if there's something that comes up and you need help with, or we can. And again, we don't have all the answers. We've been through a lot of trial and error, and we found that we've found success in what we've done, and so we're pass it along. And so if we can help, we offer ourselves to call us up, email us, and we'll try. And that's really all we can do. And so, but I know what I would say most of all, I mean, there's always going to be somebody that may not agree fully with what you're saying or doing or the approach, but I feel like when you plant the seed, and then sometimes it takes longer for some seeds to germinate than others. And that's what I found in certain individuals or certain departments. Like, you do a follow-up or you come back, and maybe initially at that meeting, they were they were resistant, and they were like, I'm not feeling this. And then a week later, 2 weeks later, they're like, email you or call you and say, you know what, can I ask you some more about that? Like, how can I be better? How can I do better? How can we try to start something that's kind of doing? So, it's not everybody, but it's a work in progress. It takes time. It's like we talk about turning that cruise ship. You can crank the rudder, but it still takes time to turn. And so that's what we found. And,
amazing.
I gotta ask you, man. Thank you. You're real about your responses. While we were talking, I kept wondering, like, a few things. One of them was that, like, in most professions, I should say, as a teacher, I think the medical profession and other professions, like even pilots, when they identify a problem, I think there's a collective acknowledgement that this is the problem, and all the professionals identify the problem and recognize it as a problem, right? And I feel like this is one of the professions where the process of identifying what is problematic in the profession is the point of division. You understand what I'm saying? Like, not all the law enforcement officers are seeing the problem as a problem, right? Whereas in teaching, for example, you will rarely find teachers disagreeing about you know, best practice ideas. You understand that we all can see that, oh, okay, yeah, there is a problem. Or I may not see it entirely, but teachers are more inclined to say, tell me more, right? Because they want to get closer to understanding the problem.
Yeah.
Doctors may not understand maybe something, but they want to get closer to identifying the problem and working towards a solution, right?
Yeah.
For all these other professions. But it seems like this is the one profession where there's enough people saying there is a problem, and there's just as much others saying that there's no problem. What's that about? Now, what do you think it's about? You know, I mean, I know you ain't the guy that got the answers, but being
Yeah.
the professional that you are, you know, what do you make of that?
You know, that's a multi-layered question, and you know, and I don't have necessarily the full answer, but what I mean, what I can say is that I feel like there's a lot of individuals, one that don't have an understanding of the experience of minorities, and they don't know what it's like to necessarily feel that nervousness or that fear when dealing with law enforcement. The other thing I will say, the majority of law enforcement officers do truly get into this job to do the right thing and to be the protector. And so, and then the other part I think that's difficult is that we don't do a good job in law enforcement of really helping each other with regards to dealing with the trauma that we go through on a daily basis. And it becomes toxic at a certain time when you just continue to endure these traumas and there's no real mechanism in place to help us deal with it, because we're from day one, you know, we're the warrior, you know, and so there's a callousness that's you have to develop as an officer to get through. You know, it's very difficult to go to you know, a SIDS call, a sudden infant death syndrome. You know, when there's a child or baby that dies, you have to go, and then you go to that. You have to go, and you have to respond. You have to deal with that incident and the stress of it, and then to go home to your own 2-year-old and then looking at and your family. That's extremely traumatic. And that could just be one call in one day. And then now you go from that to suicide, and then go from that. And that's a teenage suicide. And then to go from that to an elderly person that's, in the midst of dementia and, having trouble functioning, can't remember. And, all these, and then, now we have parents and grandparents of our own. And so all these things, there's a lot that the officer has to deal with, but law enforcement, we don't have really a really good way to help ourselves deal with that. So that's problematic in and of itself. And so that's one of the things we speak to when we do these trainings. We have to start doing that. We have to start. So what we're doing is now, actually, we're in the process. We've been doing it as a practice to try when we have officers, we know officers are going to these traumatic calls. We pull them off the road and we pull them up into our PAL office, and we just kind of, talk to them, and we have stuff up there, waters and Gatorades or whatever. We have some snacks just to get them off the road and to get them to help them to decompress. We've gone to specialized peer counseling training specifically for that. But when we brainstorm, and like we're thinking about, let's write a policy to make sure that happens. Now, once we write this policy, maybe we share this policy throughout the state, and now it's a policy in every department, not just a practice, because there's a difference. And so things like that you don't think about in law enforcement unless you're put in a position or allowed to, because everything else is so hectic, it's so stressful. And so being in the position that we're in now, so being in charge of our PAL and our community outreach and community services, gives you a minute to look at it broader and realize that this needs to be prioritized within law enforcement. But we're always, we just go, and that mindset is just, and you have so being able to explain that, and I'm just, touching on it with you guys now, but being able to talk about that in a community setting, and talk about how difficult that is. Cops aren't going to tell you that, because, it's just what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to plow through. We're supposed to be those warriors. And so, I don't know if that really answered your question, but it's a lot. And that's why these things, it can't be just a quick conversation. It takes time, and it's great to have both sides together to be able to have some understanding when it's not, contentious. It happens in the street, or it happens at maybe at a council meeting. Sometimes things get out of hand and people start yelling and arguing, but they're not listening. And so that's what the goal of these meetings are, is to get us in a position to where we can feel like we're in a safe space, we're comfortable, and we not only talk to each other, but we listen. So
for sure,
that's really the goal of what we're doing.
Absolutely. Yo, listen, I'm excited. I commend you for the work that you do. I imagine that it's as you said, draining, but we've got to keep hope alive. Sandra, I don't know if you had something else to ask him. I could ask him all kinds of questions, but I want to be mindful of the jet lag.
Yeah.
And that's really the goal of Saturday. I'm so excited about it. It's listen, we've been doing the community meetings for years, and it meant so much to us to get our credentials to teach police. And now that we are able, and we got our credentials for our post credentials, Connecticut and in California, and we got the grant. So all that, all that's on the table to talk about. I mean, that was so powerful, and so meaningful to us. But to actually, and those are conversations of one with one, but now to have the conversation with everybody together, that's what it's all about. I mean, that's where the power is, and that's where the growth is. And so we're so excited to really do that. And we've done it in our community, and we've been fortunate. We have, many people that have, supported us and believed in us. And actually, we just got so proud of this. Emma Brooks, a real supporter of us in our town, in our community. She nominated us for an NAACP award for the work we're doing. And just that alone is means so much to us. But just being able to get both sides, the community and the police, in the same room to have an open, free, safe conversation. And again, sometimes it gets a little. It has gotten heated, but it hasn't gotten out of control. And it hasn't escalated because we're there to kind of facilitate it, and everybody, has that understanding. But it's just been really good, and we're excited to be able to do what we've done in our town, because we've had many of these conversations where we've had us in the community, and now our goal really is to help other communities, because like listen, Fairfield, they want to do the work. Weston wants to do West Hartford. I mean, these are communities, a lot of these departments and people that call us, that they want to do. And we just came from California. These communities, they want to do the work, but some of them just, don't necessarily know how. And right. It starts at the top. If you don't have a chief that endorses what you're doing, it's not happening, because it takes resources, it takes funding, it takes manpower, all these things we talk about, and recruitment and retention is difficult, as you can imagine, in law enforcement. Not just, I'm talking just anybody, but now you try to talk about Black and brown recruitment into law enforcement, that's even more difficult. Same as in education. Recruitment and retention is difficult at this time. It's tough. We know that, and we're trying to partner with our educators. I mean, we feel the Board of Education is our most important partner. And so we have a section that we really get into what we do and how we work with the Board of Education. And sometimes out of that, other departments say, wow, okay, maybe that's something we can do. It is one little thing. You know, we take the low-hanging fruit, take what's going to be the most cost-effective for you. You know, some of the things, you know, don't cost a lot. It just takes some effort. Sometimes, you know, it does take resources and manpower, which will ultimately cost a department. And so now you talk about funding and budgeting, and you know, so all these other things come into it. They talk about body cameras and policy changes. All these things are funding. Who's funding it? You know what I mean? And so that's all the things that people don't understand, but we talk about, and so
that's really exciting. And I'm looking forward to Saturday's workshop, and I know that there's much to be talked about as it relates to specifically our community. Curtis, thank you for making time for us.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it so much. I'm excited. I'm excited about the contention. I'm excited about the dialogue.
We're ready
I'm most
for it.
excited about just us not only listening and learning, but really leaning into this. You know, I know it's the first step of probably many, but at least we're making the step. I think Brian Stevenson once said, it's like, and I love Brian Stevenson, that hopelessness is the enemy of social justice. And I totally believe that if you don't have any hope, so I'm super hopeful about at least it being just a step, a huge step. And I know specifically for this community.
Yeah, now and hope, to be honest, you know, there are many people I feel that feel a sense of hopelessness just because of all that's going on in our culture, in our society, and around the world, to be quite honest. You know, when you look at all these things, there are some that really do feel hopeless, and you know, and I could understand that, you know, but you know, I am encouraged when, you know, with our meeting with Trey and meeting with you guys and these conversations that encourages me and it motivates me to kind of keep doing the work. And it's not easy, you know, and it's not received well everywhere we go. And but you know, that doesn't bother me. You know, but you know, I'm human. It can get you down from time to time, but things like this will you know, motivate me and excite me. And so I'm looking forward to Saturday, and I think a lot of good is going to come from it. So,
absolutely.
So just know that it took us like a year to get this going. So I'm very excited for this, and we're looking forward to seeing you on Saturday. All right.
Listen, I'm excited about it, and I really, you know, prayerfully things will be as I feel they will be, and there will be a lot of growth that comes from it. And I feel like what we do will be a model not for other communities to do. And I'm just, you know, that's what my hopes are, and I feel that that's what we'll be. So hey, I'm excited about it, and I thank you guys for your partnership, and I look forward to Saturday.
Thank you so much. Be well.